Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
And I'm Eric.
and this week we're celebrating a turkey hangover with a couple of family-friendly blockbusters that are dominating the theaters. Last week we talked about Gladiator 2. This week we'll be talking about its release companion, Wicked Part 1, and Moana 2. So a lot of big franchise movies that are either the beginning or the second installment. And that is pretty much all there is to watch at movie theaters right now, at least for me. I mentioned I have a 20 screen multiplex. I have those three films and Red One, and that's pretty much it. And I have not seen the theater this packed in quite some time. They were kind of calling this the second half, Barbenheimer Part 2 with the Wicked and Gladiator release. But I think you throw Moana in the mix, and there's really something for everyone out there right now.
Yep.
We will kick things off with a trip to Oz, the film Wicked, which is an adaptation of the incredibly popular stage musical, which is itself an adaptation of a novel. This one, not a short film, a 2 hour and 40-minute runtime, even though it's only the first part of a two-part story, kind of a little bit like what they did with Dune, where they took that one kind of long story and broke it apart. Wicked is actually, I didn't realize there's several books in kind of the Wicked book franchise. I was excited enough by this movie that I bought the first book yesterday. So,
Cool.
And we got the soundtrack, and I may have seen it twice in a 1 week span already, which I don't usually do. And more importantly, I asked my wife, like, what's going on? Because she has probably not seen a movie in the theaters since we went and saw Twisters in July.
Mm-hmm.
And she has gone 3 times in the last week.
Wow.
Twice to see Wicked and once to see Moana 2. She was very excited about both the movies we're going to talk about today. Wicked follows the friendship or the story of Glinda, who at the time we first meet her when they're students at Shiz University goes by Linda, the G being very important, and Elphaba, who has come to be known as the Wicked Witch of the West. We start kind of at the end of where the original Wizard of Oz movie would have left off, with Glinda addressing the Munchkins after the Wicked Witch of the West has been melted. And then she goes back in time and starts telling the story of how they met, their first rivals. Then they become really close friends. And by the end of the first movie, it's clear that they are going to be set on opposite paths. This one features Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba and Ariana Grande as Glinda. I thought both of them were fantastic. John M. Chu directs this. He's done a lot of movie musicals, and I watched, there's actually a like a 45-minute kind of making of behind the scenes on the Peacock app. It aired on NBC, I think, right before the movie release, that gives you a little bit of behind the scenes. I'm looking at the practical sets and things they built and seeing how they did that. There is, I noticed when I was watching it, the level of craft here is a little bit different. A lot of these blockbusters CGI the crap out of everything in the background. You can tell there was a lot of practical sets here as you're adapting a stage play and a stage musical. But the look is fantastic. It's beautiful. The music is incredibly moving. Those two ladies were great. This is a movie, this also rarely happens. I mentioned I saw this twice. I raised my score after the second showing and raised its position in my year-end rankings. I am giving this one 2 thumbs up. I had a lot of fun with this. I think it's also the kind of film that is one that's definitely worth seeing on the big screen. The first time we saw this, my wife and I saw it on XD in D-box seats, so we were flying with the witch, which was an exciting experience, but it was even better when my seat wasn't moving the second time. So I love this movie a lot. Complete opposite reaction for me for the other big release from last week, which was Gladiator, which I thought killed the joy I had in my spirit.
Too many sharks.
Among other things. So, Eric, are you also defying gravity?
I am kind of defying gravity. Look, I'll give this movie the credit that it is due. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are spectacular performers and spectacular actors. I do have this one issue that's a little bit unfair to make about Cynthia Erivo, and that's that I think she's always making the same face. Always. I even it's either like a more intense and aggressive version of it, or it's a softer version of it, but it's the same face. But whatever she's doing works. It's not like it feels like she can't emote differently. Like she is doing a fantastic job here. My issues, I can boil down. I have issues with this movie that boil down to two things. One of them is the runtime, and the other one is that, in my opinion, everything like that is deep or impactful that the movie can be credited with, that people are giving it credit for, is actually very surface level. And I think this movie trades a lot of character development and story development for spectacle, which is fine. And I can see this movie becoming a classic in line with like some of your biggest movies of all time, where you've had this part 1 and part 2, and it becomes this like talked about like, oh, 10th anniversary of Wicked when it came out. Like this is the definitive adaptation.
You loved it so much, you just got choked up thinking about it.
So, I'm giving it 1 thumb up. You know, on a rewatch again, I always need to see things twice. I might feel differently, but from what I understood, there are 2 really big central plot points here. One is Elphaba's journey of self-acceptance and belonging, and kind of rising above that to do something unique with her, what makes her special, to rise above falling into like the crowd and to be something. Like it's a very heartfelt story that again is kind of almost told in just a handful of beats. You know, I would point to, she is bullied as a child. She arrives at the school. She is forced to put on the hat. She dances with Ariana Grande. And those are really all of the turning points in her character until she meets Oz. And then she makes a definitive choice about herself. And it's just over this long 2 hour and 40 minute spread. There's these little touches here and there of her character growing. And I think that works out really well. I think it's satisfying. And I think particularly Ariana Grande having to play this sort of like, not vapid, but like this sort of light, kind of misguided, you know, her big way of demonstrating her solidarity for the animals is to change her name a little bit. You know, she can see that things are important to the people that are important to her, and she can see that they're becoming important to each other. But she's just so absorbed in the culture of Oz and everything that she's just sort of out of touch. And so when she's faced with this choice to either support her friend or support Oz, Ariana Grande does an amazing job of playing this character in this really sort of twisted, unsure decision. And I think I can't be understated enough. I think her character is someone who doesn't have to go through as much bombastic emotion as Cynthia Erivo, but I think what she's doing is just a little more nuanced even than people are pointing out. I think she was fantastic. That being said, I don't understand at all, period, what is going on in terms of antagonism in the movie. It seems very, 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 very shallow to me that they're just like, well, Oz wants them to create a common enemy, So they're taking all of the animals that are a part of society and they're going to make them more animals instead of more like humanoid sentient and put them in cages. Why? We see everyone in Oz at the school cheering and happy and totally content. Everyone in the Emerald City cheering and happy, large, big, long, sprawling dance numbers. There is not a single second's of indication that there is unrest and Oz needs to create a common enemy in order for them to be in control. There is not a single suggestion that, well, the animals are bad because of this reason, or that they're going to have to, I mean, there's a teacher that shows up and says, this is a cage and this animal is going to be in a cage. And Elphaba stands up and is like, this is not right. Are we really going to let this happen? Let Tyrion Lannister be dragged away? And it was all very like, okay, I see what they're doing. I see why this is important to Elphaba, but what is happening? And it's a very long story, and it's really crucial to Elphaba's character that she is overcoming and putting this cause at the core of her being and deciding to shirk society and live, on her own in order to fight for this cause. And I don't understand why it's happening.
Well, they start to talk about it in the class that you can see, like, just at the edge of where everything looks nice and beautiful are these wastelands because they started to undergo severe drought.
Okay.
And that's when people started to turn. You're not picking up at the beginning of a change. You're picking up somewhere in the middle. And you see even signs of, like, even at the beginning when they're throwing, when her power gets away from her when she's first dropping her sister off, and the bench flies into, there was a beautiful carving of the wizard, and when it gets hit and it falls out, you can see behind it was animals and people together, like they're covering up the history. Almost reminds me a little bit of like in Ragnarok when Cate Blanchett's character comes back and destroys all their carvings and says, you've covered up this history that you don't want people to remember. And so the wizard talks about when he sees her that when he first got there, people were divided into factions, and it reminded him of being at home, where if you can get the majority of the populace to unite around a common enemy, you can build joy. So it's an indication that that's a way he's keeping control of.
Sure. I just,
and eliminating people that are speaking out or that want things to be different or go back to.
Right. And so just a part of just this mechanism of control is, I guess what I would like to have seen is one demonstration of why the animal citizens are the target that said, like, these are the ones that we will ostracize in order to demonstrate control.
And I'm guessing there's probably more. I've understood that the book is a little bit different and a little bit different in tone. And the original book was adapted. It was interesting when I was watching the making of. The producer, who's the producer for the movie, said he was originally taking the book and he had for a long time tried to figure out how to adapt it into a movie. And that's when they came along with this idea of making it a stage musical. And so then they went and made it a stage musical. And now they're adapting that musical back to a movie. I'll be curious. I bought the novel to see how it changes and how it fills things out. But I think the conflict between Elphaba and the wizard isn't just purely about that. It's the idea that he portrays himself as the kind of like all-powerful, beneficent ruler. But he's really kind of a petty guy that uses tricks to consolidate power and power in the realm, but has no actual magical power.
And that's why
to use her, and she feels like she's been manipulated all of her life and abused by people that wanted to
Yeah.
control her. I think that's what she bucks against.
That's what elevates really the whole thing to me is from the moment that
But there's a lot of
Elphaba and Galinda
fascinating.
arrive at Oz, like, and they meet the wizard on, I think is spectacular. It's whatever has happened before it, it's spun into this fantastic uh sort of ending and climax. And yeah.
But and that kind of goes to, if you're really listening, and it probably hit me more on the second watch, when Galinda sings the song Popular, about making her
Mhm.
popular. But the whole point about it doesn't really matter what your ideas are, or that you don't really even have to stand for anything if you're popular. And they start pointing to elections and people that are in power in places, and it starts dawning on her that it's not because they're the best people, it's
Yeah.
because they're the most popular. It gives you
Mhm.
something depressing to think about, especially this
Yes.
month we're living in. There's a lot of
See,
things
that's
that
the
are,
thing.
this story is older. I mean Wicked's been for more than 20 years on the stage, and it's been for even longer than that in book form. I think it was the late 90s
Mhm.
when he wrote these books, but the themes continue to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. They I wish that they were more themes and not just talking points.
Well, in the first one, you have a lot of heavy lifting to do, I think, of creating the world and the characters. I think you have to be really invested in both Elphaba and Glinda. When you start the beginning, you talk about how great Ariana Grande's performance is, and I agree. I think what's more almost important in the long span of this is the arc of her character, because she essentially starts out as what would easily be classified in a lot of movies as the central mean girl.
Mhm.
And it's the mid kind of one of the midpoints when she starts to see kindness differently.
Mhm.
And that's what makes that so special. And it's what makes it a little bit heartbreaking at the end, because she's torn between her life's mantra of being on the popular side and somebody that she does genuinely love.
Mhm.
And that's what that
That's
that
awesome.
song, I hope you're happy with the choice you make.
Mhm.
And at the very beginning, when
Oh man.
she's asked about, you can see some of the conflict at times, even that first song when nobody mourns the wicked.
Yeah.
But there are times when she's going through that song that doesn't look like it totally feels right
Yeah.
for her. And so where are we going to end up? And if this was the complete story, maybe I'd be more troubled by some of those things. But we know that this is
Yeah, part 1.
part one, and that closing sequence is spectacular.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see where it's going. It comes out next Thanksgiving, so
Mhm.
I'm excited. I went and bought the book yesterday, so we'll definitely be reading that.
Now,
This might be my wizard year, because I told my wife I'm committed to reading all the Harry Potter books before that show arrives in the beginning of 26.
okay.
Well, I've seen the movies a bunch of times, but I've not read the books.
Yeah. And now I'm curious, is Wicked a part of the original book line of The Wizard of Oz, or
So
is
Frank
it?
L. Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz, and then
Yeah.
in the 90s, Gregory Maguire wrote The Wicked Years, and there
Okay.
are 4 books in there beginning with Wicked. So it is a completely different author offering a
Okay.
completely different take and backstory.
Okay.
And it was that book that was then adapted to the stage musical, and
Gotcha.
yeah, that was originally played by Indina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, who appear in Wicked together.
Mhm.
I thought that was one of the best. That got one of the biggest ovations in our screening especially on the first night we went like Friday night when it opened, when you probably have the hardcore theater kid fans out there.
Once we're
So
wanting to sing in the theater.
yeah, so I thought that was a lot of a lot of fun.
Sure.
Our other movie this week, another family kind of friendly one. This one released on Wednesday, just in time for Thanksgiving, and that is the sequel to Moana, Moana 2, the original film, which found our island chief's daughter and an ocean explorer teaming with a demigod named Maui, was released in 2016. It was notable for fun characters, animation, but also some pretty incredible songs in the original, which were crafted by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you can actually hear him singing as background characters on a few of those songs in the original. It's been a couple of years. They're actually, ironically, working on the live action Moana movie, which is set to release, I think, next year. That will have Dwayne Johnson reprising his role as Maui, and that a lot of interesting twists and turns. I think at one point the basic idea for Moana 2 was going to be a Disney Plus series, but then they decided to go back to making it a feature film. And, I thought it was fun. It picks up, kind of expands the characters a little bit, follows some of the same story beats and basic ideas from the first, but I thought it was good. Probably not quite as memorable of original music. Lin-Manuel Miranda was not involved in this one. He actually has been working on the music for another Disney release that's coming in a few weeks, and that is Mufasa, if you watch the credit roll for that. But this one, a lot of the original voice cast is back, including Dwayne Johnson, and is it Huli Cravajo? I'm never entirely sure how to pronounce her name, who plays Moana. We actually saw her in live action musical form earlier this year. She was in the Mean Girls remake. Yeah, she plays the friend in Mean Girls. But I thought this one was fun. We had a blast going to it. I'm giving it 1 thumb up. I don't know if I thought it was quite it doesn't hit quite as hard as probably the first one, which had a couple of banger songs and a little more originality, but it's still fun. I like the animation. I like the arc of the story. And I think it's pretty entertaining and a little bit of a tighter runtime, like an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely adored Moana 2. And so far the critics' consensus is everything from mediocre to negative. And I don't understand that even remotely. Criticisms of this movie mostly are leveled at it's a sequel that doesn't bring enough new to the table, that it's like, why even make it? It's just a cash grab, blah, 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 blah. And I disagree with the sentiment that's like floating around wholeheartedly. I do think it is a sequel in the sense that it does build on the same story beats, and it tries to do the thing where, well, your sequel is the first movie but bigger and like it does what it does. But I thought Moana 1 was a movie that is strikingly similar to Wicked. About a character who does not fit in with her society, and she decides to rise above and go for a cause, and like save people, and they're different from that. But like it's a movie about someone who is like, I have to be my true self, and I'm going to go save my people and do that. And I meet a demigod on the way, and he is a supportive person, and it's all about what they can do for themselves. And this movie is entirely about what they can do to connect with other people and with the support of other people, and what Maui cannot do alone, because he cannot bring an island back from the ground alone. He can't do things without Moana. They have to trust each other. They have to face danger. And I adored everything about this story, and the growth of Moana's family, her tie to her sister, and the way they built on concepts like her connection with family in the ocean and her ancestors. And there's this low-key sort of undercurrent that the Polynesian race is dying out, and here you come with a movie based around Polynesian culture with more songs that are leaning into Polynesian culture. that is about how these people need to reconnect and need to rebuild, and they've been lost and desperate and are dying out. And so it's reflective of a very real world panic and potential tragedy. And there's so much going on with this, and I I I really love the first Moana, and I agree that I don't think there's the songs in this are as particularly like heart stabbing and memorable and punchy as they are, but they certainly aren't bad, and they certainly aren't, like this movie is extremely effective for me, and I'm not entirely sure why, in a world of where like we're watching Gladiator 2, which isn't going over. It's not, people aren't saying it's the greatest thing ever. And like Wicked, which is a story, that we've seen before. Someone's standing up for themselves. They're an outcast in society and they learn to embrace themselves. And they, is a bad guy who is an equivalent to a modern day like political thing. And like, it's just weird to have one movie be celebrated as to be classic of all time, amazing A+ movie, and have another movie come out and be like, it's too similar to what we've seen before, like C minus mid. It's not that great. It's very bizarre to me. So yeah, I really adored Moana one day. It is still one thumb up for me, but it's a very strong thumb up.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, people haven't been as excited. I haven't seen a lot of super negative reviews. I think people have genuinely liked it okay, just haven't seen it as maybe taking sometimes you have sequels that do amazing things and take in a wildly different direction. This doesn't go in a wildly different direction, but I think it's definitely going to be satisfying and pleasing for people who are fans of the world and want to see this story continue. And sometimes there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I definitely had fun. It was a interesting theater experience for us. We went on Wednesday morning after I dropped my car off. We went and got breakfast. We went to the theater right when they're hitting kind of that big song from Maui, when they're getting ready to go back out to tackle. Fire alarm went off at our theater, so we got to evacuate into the parking lot, into the snowstorm for 20 minutes, and then come back in and finish it. So it was a very rousing conclusion. I didn't realize this movie was long enough to require an intermission, but apparently there it is.
No.
But no, it was. I had fun with it. I had fun with both of them. I would watch Moana 2 every day for the rest of my life if I never had to see Gladiator 2 again.
Yeah.
So, but both these movies, I think too, The Great Advantage, this is, we're coming into a holiday season, a lot of people gathering with family, looking for fun things to do with family of all ages. I think both these movies work for that. Wicked, one of the few big blockbuster films that's PG, and I think Moana 2 is PG as well. So nice to have those options. If you want to regret all your life decisions, you can go see an R-rated movie in Gladiator 2. If you want to feel better about the world, you can see Wicked and Moana 2, which were out as well. Looking forward to seeing kind of now as we turn the page. We will be coming back next December. We'll be moving from animated family-friendly back into horror. It has been a year for horror with the horror comedy that takes us back to the turn of the millennia in Y2K. So very curious to see how that one turns out as we kickstart December. A few big blockbusters along the way coming in December. So some fun things to end the year, and then we'll see what ends up on our top year-end lists. I know Eric and I are working on those, thinking about movies that have meant a lot to us this year. So hopefully you will be doing that as well. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts about this week's films?
No, not particularly.
Well, that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you back, hoping not to get bit by the Y2K bug for Y2K next week. Till then, we will see you at the movies.